Hey guys, tonight I'm here to talk to you guys about mental illness and taking a good look at, a self inventory of yourself, where your friends might be at, where your family might be at, and just taking the right next move. And, um, so National Institute of Mental Health states that 1 in 5 young adults experience mental health each year. Less than half ever receive any treatment for it. And mental illness is just something that is really hard to live with and is heavy. And I personally don't think people should go through it alone. And among U.S. youth ages 10 through 24, we've seen an increase of 62% from 2007 to 2021. Nearly 50% of those young adults, do not receive any treatment for their mental illness. Obviously, we can see the increase in, the mass shootings, the increase in suicide, the increase in just the numbers of mental illness, the numbers of prescriptions being handed out for antidepressants, SSRIs, etc. And some people might argue that we're seeing these increases in the numbers because of the increased awareness, because requirements might get, loosened to make more diagnosis about, mental illness diagnosis like bipolar, depression, anxiety, whatever it might be. And I think even with the awareness that we have, that with it increased, that the suicide data alone and obviously the mass shooting data alone shows us that it deserves a better awareness. And, I would even argue a better approach, especially individually from all of us. And, I hope and I pray that some of y'all are on your own journey. And if you do suffer from it, I unfortunately have been surrounded by it. There have been, when I was in high school, there were 2 kids who committed suicide, and, I didn't know them beyond their names. One kid I had a PE class with, and he was a jokester, and he would always come up to me and be like, play rock, paper, scissors out of nowhere. Just, he was just a goof. And he did it while we were in high school, and it was really sad. And, that didn't even wake me up yet to realize how important it was, how down bad those people were, and how maybe they just need an arm around them, a phone call, and maybe they wouldn't have done that. I don't know. And also, when we got out of high school, 2 kids from my graduating class ended up committing suicide in college, and it was devastating to even hear about. There was one kid was in my 5th grade class, and he was such a nice kid to everybody. He, I don't know his home life or anything else, but he was as genuine and as nice as anyone I've ever met in my life. And another was a girl, and I don't know much of her story, but I just know that it's incredibly sad, and we didn't deserve to lose them, and I know their families did not deserve to lose them at that young of an age. So tonight I'm here to talk to you about just, get educating yourself on the warning signs. I'll tell you a few right here from, it's spelled out NAMI.org. Feelings of excessive sadness or, being low. Extreme mood changes, including uncontrollable highs or feelings of euphoria. Prolonged or strong feelings of irritability or anger, avoiding friends and social activities, difficulties understanding or relating to other people, changes in sleeping habits or feeling tired and low energy. There's so many things to find on this topic now because of the increased awareness. There's classes through this website. There's, there's a spot where it says you can talk about your journey, you can hear about other people's journey. Um, you know, also the World Health Organization states that we can even receive treatment in like a low resource context, where, might not financially hurt us as much. I've yet to find it, I guess, but we could take steps through the school. I know, um, if you go to church, I know there's tons of small groups. I'm sure there's other small groups where you could just go hang out with guys or girls, whatever you like, and just talk about life, talk about your issues, and ask a friend for coffee if you want to just talk with them, and make it intentional about talking about your mental health and where you're at, and it just unloads the weight off you, and and it's not trauma dumping on someone else. Like, there are people that they're around us for a reason. They're around us to pick us up, to help us whenever we need help, and it's a great thing, and that's part of being in a community where I feel like if a lot more people took intentional steps for their mental illness, we might not look at everyone like strangers as much as we do. I feel, my fiance was in Waffle House today, and we were getting to-go food, and she got yelled at by a stranger because she thought we were taking her table, and we weren't even sitting down. We were just grabbing our to-go food, and it's just the immediate, quick, like, turn to anger for what could be resolved in a quick question with no emotion. It's just crazy to me. But and speaking of my fiance, I got her permission to share her story, and she was raised by an alcoholic mom, who ended up leaving. Excuse me. She ended up leaving when she was 8, and she was raised by a single dad for her whole life. And most recently, whatever. But when she was 19, she actually had her breaking point, and she got to a spot where she was going to commit suicide that night, and her dad was home, thank God, and he called someone who dealt in this kind of thing, and she gave him the next right thing to do. And so he made a call to the authorities, and the authorities came and got her and took her to Peninsula, and she was there for 7 days. And so, after she got out, we were dating during the time, and she tried to break up with me right when she got in there, and I refused. I wrote her dad a letter, and I said, I slipped it under his garage door, and I was, bottom line, I was like, whatever you hear, whatever's going on, I love you. I know she loves you, and I didn't even know yet. I just, I knew something was wrong because her phone was off. She hadn't texted or called me all day. She planned to stay the night with me the night before, and so I knew something was wrong. And so she ended up calling me, and she dumped me over the phone, and I was like, no. And she was like, I'm sorry, I can't. It's too much, and I need to take care of myself. And I just, I was like, Matt, I love you. If it is me, I will leave. But if you're just doing this to protect me, you don't have to protect me. And so when she got out in a week, she came and saw me at my work, and it was, magical. And today she'll always tell me, like, she can't ever imagine ripping herself away from my life, from her dad's life, from everyone surrounding her. And she is so thankful to be alive. And, she is just a beacon of hope for me personally, for everyone around us. I hope for y'all now, and that, recovery is possible, hope is possible. And, it's just a matter of doing the next right thing. I get that from a podcast called the Dr. John Deloney Show. He's a therapist who just takes calls from people like you and I, and he always says, do the next right thing, do the next right step. And, see where you end up. And typically it's going to be better if you're doing the next right thing over and over and over and over. And so some of us have Professor Matherly, and Professor Matherly, he'll always say, don't drown in silence. He's talking about education, but I thought of it more personally, oddly. And I was like, man, that's amazing. And, don't drown in silence, reach out. There's the school resources, there's friends, there's the classmates, there's family, small groups, whatever. Bottom line, don't wait. Don't drown in silence. Learn the signs. Speak out about your truth. Speak out about, ask if someone else is going through something, with sensitivity, obviously. And remind others that they matter. I'll remind you that you matter. And, it's been a pleasure to speak to y'all all semester. Hopefully I got better. I don't know. I doubt it. But y'all were great. I know that. And peace.